boys and girls. Today's story is about King Xerxes of Persia, and he lived in his capital city of Susa and ruled India to Ethiopia, as you can see on this map. Almost 2,500 years ago, an orphan girl, Hadassah, became queen of the world in the capital of Persia, Susa. Here's how it happened. One day, King Xerxes gave a big dinner for all his officials and officers for 6 months. That's some dinner. On the 7th day, King Xerxes was feeling happy because of so much wine. He asked his several personal assistants to bring Queen Vashti to him. The king wanted her to wear her crown and let his people and officials see how beautiful she was. But she refused to go to him. This made him terribly angry, so he took away her right to be queen. After a while, King Xerxes got over being angry, but he kept thinking about what Vashti had done and the law that he had written because of her. The king's personal servant said, "Your Majesty, a search must be made to find some beautiful young woman for you. Let's have a beauty contest. You can select officers in every province to bring them to the palace and keep them, your wives, in the capital city of Susa. Then let the young women who pleases you most take Queen Vashti's place as queen." King Xerxes liked these suggestions and he followed them. At this time, a Jew named Mordecai was living in Susa. Mordecai had a very beautiful niece. This was Hadassah. He called her Esther because she was a star. That's what Esther means. He had raised her as his own daughter after her father and mother died. When the king ordered the search for beautiful women, many were taken to the king's palace in Susa, and Esther was one of them. Haggai was put in charge of all the women, and from the very first day, Esther was his favourite. He began her beauty treatments at once. He also gave her plenty of food and several special maids, and they had the best rooms in the palace for women. Mordecai had warned Esther not to tell that she was a Jew, and she obeyed him. Xerxes had been king for 7 years when Esther's turn came to go to him. And Xerxes fell in love with her and crowned her Queen of Persia, Queen of the world. There were 2 men who guarded King Xerxes' rooms, and they got angry with the king and decided to kill him. Mordecai found out about their plans and asked Queen Esther to tell the king what he had found out. That saved the king's life. Later, King Xerxes promoted Haman to the highest position in his kingdom. The king had given orders to his officials at the royal gate to honour Haman by kneeling down to him. All of them obeyed except Mordecai. Haman hated Mordecai. Haman wanted to kill all the Jews. "There are certain people that do not obey the king's laws and are different," said Haman to the king. "If it please, destroy them." The king replied, "Write the order and seal it with my ring." It was now the 12th year of the rule of King Xerxes. During Nisan, the first month of the year, Haman said, "Find out the best time for me to do this." So the wise men cast pur, or what we call throwing dice today, and they threw 2 sixes. The time chosen was Adar, the 12th month. Letters were sent by post into the king's provinces to destroy, kill, cause to perish all Jews, young and old, little children and women, in one day, even upon the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month of Adar, and to take the spoil for the prey, or for themselves. When Mordecai heard about the letter, he tore his clothes in sorrow and put on sackcloth. He had it shown to Esther, asking her to go to the king and beg him to have pity on her people, the Jews. She answered, "Tell Mordecai there is a law about going in to see the king, and all his officials and his people know about this law. Anyone who goes to see the king without being invited by him will be put to death. The only way that anyone can be saved is for the king to hold out his golden scepter to that person, and it's been 30 days since he has asked for me." When Mordecai was told that Esther said, he sent back this reply: "Don't think that you will escape being killed with the rest of the Jews just because you live in the king's palace. It could be that you were made queen for a time like this." Queen Esther's problem: go to the king, risk being killed, but she could save her people. Or don't do anything, the Jews will die, and she may die also. That's some problem. So Esther sent a message to Mordecai saying, "Bring together all the Jews in Susa, and tell them to fast and pray. Don't eat or drink for 3 days and nights, and I will do the same. Then I'll go to see the king. So will I go into the king, which is not according to the law. And if I perish, I perish." Mordecai went his way and did according to all that Esther had commanded him. For the next 3 days Esther and her maidens prayed and did not eat or drink. 3 days later Esther dressed in her royal robes and went into the inner court of the palace in front of the throne. The king was sitting there, facing the open doorway. He was happy to see Esther, and he held out his golden scepter to her. And the king said, "Esther, what brings you here?" And Esther answered, "Your Majesty, please come with Haman to a dinner I have prepared for you today." The king said, "Hurry and get Haman, so that we can accept Esther's invitation." And the king asked her after dinner, "What can I do for you?" And Esther replied, "Your Majesty, please come again tomorrow with Haman to dinner, and I will answer your Majesty's question." That night the king couldn't sleep, and he had a servant read him the records of what had happened since he had been king. When the servant read how Mordecai had kept 2 servants from killing the king asked, "What has been done to reward Mordecai for this?" "Nothing, Your Majesty," the king's servants replied. About this time Haman came in to ask the king to have Mordecai hanged on his tower that he had built overnight. The king asked, "Who is that man waiting in front of the throne room?" The servants replied, "Your Majesty, it's Haman." "Have him come in," the king commanded. When Haman entered the room, the king asked him, "What should I do for a man I want to honour?" Haman was sure that he was the one the king wanted to honour. So he replied, "Your Majesty, if you wish to honour a man, have someone bring one of your own robes and one of your own horses. Have one of your highest officials lead him through the streets of the city on the horse, shouting, 'This is how the king honours a man.'" The king replied, "Hurry and do what you've just said. Get a robe and a horse for Mordecai." It was not going to be Haman's day. Haman got the king's robe, put it on Mordecai, and led him through the city on the horse, and shouted as he went, "This is how the king honours a man." Afterwards, Mordecai returned to his duty at the palace gate, and Haman hurried home, hiding his face in shame. Haman told his wife and friends what had happened. Then his wife and advisers said, "If Mordecai is a Jew, this is just the beginning of your troubles. You'll end up ruined." Part 2. Oh, it gets worse for Haman, boys and girls.